You don't need 80 of them right there. Well, if you just have an image and you just want one image and you don't want it to repeat, then you can change that as well. I mean, by default, as you saw, the image is just going to repeat both left and right and up and down. It's going to tile itself. So you don't always want this effect. So in order to make it not repeat, go ahead and type background minus repeats, and as the property you can either have it, I think it's like repeat on by default or something. Anyways, default is what you saw. If you don't want it to repeat, then type no repeat and check it out. If we save this and refresh, we see we only have one image that doesn't repeat. So if you made this big cool background that some images are made for repeating, some aren't. So anyways, no need to explain. So that is how you get an image not to repeat. And I just shook that, and since I have Windows 7, it closed everything. So let me open everything back up, and yeah, make sure we got that. So anyways, that is how you make it not repeat. But if you're saying, alright, but what if a special case scenario comes along that I only want to repeat it left and right, or dang it, now my Camtasia shut. There we go. My screen recorder shut down. I didn't know how long I had on my video, but I gotta remember not to shake any windows again, I guess. But anyways, sometimes you're gonna come across a situation where you have this image, but you only want to tile either left or right or up and down. So you can do that using the same background repeat property, but instead of no repeat, go ahead and change to repeat minus X, and this is going to tile it, let me show you, left and right in the x-axis. The x-axis is left and right, y is up and down, and z is forward and backward. But since we're working with a computer screen, we don't have z. So, just a little tidbit of information. So that tiles it left and right. Y, if you repeat it, tiles up and down. This kind of reminds me of, when you go to the mall and you put like $1 in those photo booths. That's what it reminds me of. Kind of freaky seeing me staring at myself. But anyways, that is how you tile it up and down. And the last thing I want to mention is let's go ahead and put no repeat so I can demonstrate the last point I have. Whenever you have a background image, I mean, you might be saying this, alright, I want one image, I don't want it to repeat, but the only thing is, I don't want it stuck in the top left corner. I want it either, maybe centered on your website, or maybe you want it 10 pixels over and 50 pixels down, or you want it in a specific location. You don't always want it jammed up in the top left. So in order to do that, you need a property called background minus position, and this lets you alter the position of your background image. Now this takes two parameters. The first parameter, or the first piece of information it needs, is how far from the left hand side do you want to move it. So go ahead and put 10 pixels. Now your image is going to be shifted 10 pixels to the right. And the next piece of information you need to give is how far from the top do you want to move it. So let's say you want to move it 60 pixels down. So go ahead and write 60 pixels, and that's it. Just save it and see what we got. So now that we changed that background position 10 pixels, 50 pixels, it took this image, which was jammed up in the top left, moved it 10 pixels to the right and 60 pixels down, or 50, I forgot what I put. 60, there we go. But we're saying, alright, that's pretty cool, Bucky, but I don't, let's say I want something like, I want this picture centered on my web page, but I don't know how big their browser window is going to be. So how am I supposed to guess how many pixels? Well, lucky for you, not only can you do this with pixels, but you can also do it as percentages. So if you want it 60 pixels down, but you want it centered, then just go ahead and say, alright, move it 50% from the left. And this is going to center it left and right, or horizontal, whatever. So let's go ahead and save this and see what we got. Since it's 50% to the left, that means there's 50% to the right. That means your background image is perfectly centered in the middle of your website. So this is perfectly centered left and right, and it's also down 60 pixels. So that is pretty much all you need to know with working with background images. Again, there's probably some more, but this is pretty much the core foundation of working with background images. So if you understand this, then you should be good to go from now on. So anyways, that's all I have for you guys for this tutorial. I know I threw a lot at you, but you can always watch it again if you didn't catch anything. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to check out my website. Welcome back, guys. It's Bucky, and welcome to your 21st XHTML and CSS tutorial. And in this tutorial, I'm going to introduce a concept with CSS that tends to give people a lot of trouble. And the reason for this is that people tend to explain this in it's not the most easiest concept to grasp, but it is critical whenever you're creating a website and you need to position elements exactly how you want them. So anyone I ever heard that tried to explain this to me did a pretty terrible job. So I'm going to try and clear everything up for you. So whenever you have an element on your screen like a header, let's go ahead and put a header 2 and let's write I love Bucky. That's good enough. I love Bucky. And let's go ahead and check this out right now. Whenever we have any element basically on the screen, we look at this element and say, oh, this is nice. Text on the screen. That's all I see. But check it out, and here's where I'm going to throw you for a loop. This one element actually consists of 4 different parts. Now, we already know that the text, and that is called the content. But what you don't see is the 3 other parts, and that's because they're all white right now, so they're kind of hard to see. But there's actually the content, which I just showed you was a text, the padding, which we're going to be going over this tutorial. And the padding is basically this. See this blue that I just highlighted and everything turned blue? Well, if you could go ahead and draw a box around here and make a border, the padding would be the space between the text and the border. And that brings me to the third part, which is actually the border. And the margin is a space outside the border. So anyways, the space between the text itself and this little line, the border, that is called the padding, and that is what I'm going to show you guys in this tutorial. So let's go ahead, and the first thing that we need to do is change this from a white padding to a white background, because how the heck are we going to be able to tell what's going on there? So the first thing that we need to do is change the background color. So in order to do that, go ahead and type the element you want to work with, H2, and let's just go ahead and put background color, and don't put something too dark, because black on something dark is just gonna look bad. So put like something like yellow or pink or orange maybe. So I'm gonna go ahead and put yellow, and let's save this and see what we got. So now that might be a little easier to see the some background other than white. So now we can see that we have our content, and we don't have a whole lot of space between the edge of this yellow and the text. It's pretty much butted up right up against the edge. So if you're saying, alright, I have this background, but I basically want to add some padding between the text and the background. So in order to do that, I mean, you guys can probably figure out what's going to happen right now. But you can either do this in one of 2 ways. You can either change the overall padding by typing the keyword padding and setting it equal to a value like 20 pixels. So let's go ahead and save this and see what happens. Whenever we refresh this, you see that we get a nice little pad between our text and the edge of our border, and that is actually 20 pixels on either side. 20 pixels on bottom, 20 pixels on top, 20 pixels on left, and 20 pixels on right, even though there's like 100 pixels because it's the width of the screen. But anyways, 20 pixels of padding all the way around. But now you're saying, alright, I mean, so right now you can basically understand what padding is. It's the space between the text and the border of whatever you're working with. But you're saying, alright, I understand padding, simple enough. But now, what I want to do is, I want padding, but I don't want it all the way around. Maybe you only want padding on the top and bottom. Well, in order to do that, this isn't going to work anymore, because this gives you padding all the way around. In order to change the padding in any one direction, they give you 4 keywords that you can use. Padding top, padding bottom, padding left, and padding right. So let's go ahead and change it on top and bottom. Padding minus top. Definitely spelled that wrong. Padding top, let's go ahead and add like 30 pixels. And for the padding bottom, let's go ahead and add like, I don't know, 20. Pick anything you want. Who the heck cares? And let's go ahead and make sure you put pixels. and save this and see what happens. So now when we refresh this, we see, I forgot my values already, 30 and 20. We got 30 pixels of padding on top and 20 pixels of padding on bottom and no padding to the left. So maybe when I do this, you can see more clear what is padding and why it is helpful. So anyways, whenever you want to, how should I say this? Place items on your website very specifically, padding comes into play a lot. So whenever you just want that header but just a couple pixels to the right, that is when you can use padding. So anyways, the next thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is borders and margins, and they're a lot different than padding, although a lot of people get them confused. So don't forget to watch my next couple tutorials, and that's it. I'll see you guys later. Alright guys, welcome back to your 20-second XHTML and CSS tutorial, and as promised, I'm going to be talking to you guys about borders. And I'm not talking about like the Mexican-US border, I'm talking about borders in CSS. Now, as I mentioned before, or at least I think I mentioned this before, the border is the area that surrounds or basically it outlines the padding. So what I did before this tutorial is I just set the overall padding to 15 pixels, so we have the content and we have 15 pixels of padding around it. So now what I need to do is show you guys what a border is. So let me make one of the ugliest borders ever. I'm just going to make it stand out, and I'm going to make like a red border or something. So the border, you think you might just be able to type border and type a red, but you can't just do that. Border actually has 3 properties that you need to set in order to make a border. The first one is border color, and let's just go ahead and set this equal to red. That should look pretty good. And the second one is width. How wide or thick do you want your border? And that's border width, and I'm just going to make mine like 3 pixels or something. That'll be good enough. And the last the last element you need to set when working with the border is border style. Now, I think by default it might be solid, but let's see if I can remember. There's dotted, dashed, I think there's one called double, groove, inset, outset, solid. Anyways, you can look them up online if you forget them, but let's go ahead and I'll add a simple one. Border minus style dash, and this gives you like dotted lines basically. So now let's go ahead and save this and see what we get. When we refresh this, we get a red 3 pixels wide dashed border. Pretty cool, huh? So this kind of actually reminds me of a coupon that you would cut out. So if you're making a website with coupons to Love Bucky, then there you go. I just basically made it for you. So that is basically how you do that. And another cool thing I want to mention before I let you guys go is each side can have its own border. So whenever you think of something with a border, you typically think the border is consistent all the way around. But sometimes when you're creating a website, you want the top to be one thing, or maybe you only want a border on the bottom like it's underlined in a cool type of way. So you can do that using some special border properties, and that's this. Say you want to change like the top or something, you can use border minus top minus color and set this equal to like green. That looks good. And now what you can do is like put border minus top minus style, and let's make this one dotted. And now let's go ahead and oh yeah, the width. Border minus top minus width, and set this equal to like 4 pixels. Bump it up a little bit, and if I didn't mess up anything, I should get a nice dotted green 4 pixel border across the top. So this looks pretty ugly right now, but trust me, if you work with it, I mean, most people you just use this when they want to underline something, like if it's like the title of a paragraph or title of an article or something. But I just want to show you guys a quick example, so I made the ugliest website I could possibly make. But anyways, I showed you guys how to do that on the top, but if you just replace this word top with bottom, left, or right, then you guys can see the other effects that it can have. I'm not going to go through bottom, left, and right because it's obvious what it would do. So anyways, that is how you make a border. Whether you want it consistent, you just write border minus the property, or if you want it on one side, you write border minus what side you want minus the property and then write the value. So anyways, that's basically all there is to borders. Nothing else I can think of. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next tutorial where we're probably going to be covering margin. So I'll see you then. Alright guys, welcome to your last tutorial on the CSS box model, and the last element that we have to cover is the margin. Now the margin is the area outside the border and outside the padding. It's the area basically that surrounds the entire element. So let's go ahead and actually make some paragraphs. That'll probably be the easiest to see. So paragraphs actually have margin by default, one of the few elements. So this is a paragraph. Make sure you spell that. Wow, I was pretty close actually. So anyways, let's go ahead and paste that, and actually we probably should add a background color. So P background color, and just make it orange or something. Nothing too light, nothing too dark, just right. And I'm talking about orange, yeah. And check it out. This is Abracafta, and this is Abracafta. So as you can see, by default, it has probably, I don't know, how tall is my mouse cursor? Probably like 10 or 15 pixels or something. So by default, paragraphs have a margin between them. But what are we saying? Alright, I wrote this sweet article, and I made it into a couple paragraphs, but I either think it's too much or I want to tighten the paragraphs up so they're closer together. Well, in order to do this, you need to play with the property called margin. Now, the margin, like I said, is a space around each of these paragraphs. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Just like the padding, that's what I was trying to think of. You can either play with margin in one of two ways. You can either change it overall or you can change it individually. So let's go ahead, and the first thing I want to do is show you guys how to tighten up your paragraph. So if you want to tighten it up to like 1 pixel, just like that. If you set margin to 1 pixel on your paragraphs, it goes from the default, which is, I'm going to say it's like 10 pixels by default, and it refreshes it. You now have a 1 pixel of space in between your paragraphs. So that is a way to tighten up. You can even set it to 0 if you want, but then it wouldn't even be a paragraph at all. It would just be like a line break. So anyways, that is how you would do that. Now if you want to space it out even more, I think it's like 10 or 15 by default, so let's really stretch it out to like 40 pixels. And you can either do that, and now when you press refresh, each of your paragraphs has 40 pixels surrounding it. So, I mean, if you're going for that effect, then that is what you do. And what I want you to take notice of is that the padding does not change. The padding and the border are staying the same. It's the margin around it that is changing. So that's the difference between the padding and the margin. A lot of people get this confused. Just remember, padding is inside the border, margin is outside the border, and you'll be fine. You'll be way ahead of everyone else. They'll be lost in the dark because they read books instead of watching my tutorials. Those idiots. So like I said way before, you can change margin in one of two ways. You can either change it overall, or I'm not even going to go through this. You can change it one side at a time, like margin top, spell that wrong, top, margin bottom, margin right, and margin left. So I don't want to go through each one and show you because it's obvious, just like padding, what it does. But anyways, that is the difference between margins and padding and borders. And overall, that's called the CSS box model. How you can play with different areas of an element, basically. So anyways, now you understand the CSS box model. We're ready to move on to another topic. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions, just ask me on my forum, and if I see it, I'll answer. If not, trust me, there's like 8,000 people willing to answer your questions for you. So anyways, one last time, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next video. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 24th CSS tutorial, and this tutorial is probably going to be a pretty quick one because I want to go over two quick properties of CSS, and that's the width and the height. And actually, I want to talk to you guys about a couple more things I just remembered. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need is, of course, something on our website. So let's go ahead and let's add a heading 4. We never work with heading 4s, and it's a good heading. You know, it's a fourth one. Deserves some respect. So what's popping into my head? What am I going to type? My name's Forrest Gump. Close enough. A couple typos, but hey, who's counting? So let's go ahead and actually, I want to give this a pretty cool color scheme. So let's go ahead and make the background red and the text white. I always like that color scheme. So background color red and the color of the text, which is color white. So let's go ahead and save this and see what we got. My name's Forrest Gump. Now we can see a couple things are happening automatically right now. By default, our browser sets the height of the element equal to the height of the text, which you know it should, but it also sets the width of the element equal to the width of the website. So check this out. Whenever we resize our website, our element size changes. So I mean, maybe this is what you're going for, but maybe it's not. So depending on the size of the website, we really don't know how big that element's going to be. And whenever I create websites, I usually want to specify the width of things. So in order to change that up, or maybe you like it like this, okay, then leave it. But if you don't, and they're going to come across a lot of times where you don't, you're going to want to set the width and the height explicitly. So first of all, let's go ahead and change the width of that so it's not just default the entire length of the website, because when you're making a background for a header or something like that, it looks kind of weird to have all that extra space. So in order to do that, you need to type in the property width and go ahead and set this something like, let me see, let me go 350 will probably fit nicely, 350 pixels. So now you can see whenever we save this, instead of having the header background automatically span across the entire website, no matter when we resize our website, the header stays 350 pixels constantly. So it's like easier to manage, and it's easier when you're designing a website when you know what's going to happen rather than just letting your browser take care of it. So anyways, people adjust the width a lot more than they adjust the height, but there may come across a time, or you may come across a time where you want to adjust the height to like 100 pixels or something. I typically don't mess with the height whenever I'm working with elements, but some people do. So anyways, here's a quick example of you adjusting the height. It looks pretty dumb right now, and in general you don't want to mess with it, but now you guys know what the height does. So that is what I want to talk to you guys in this tutorial, width and height. And now that I have some extra time, I guess I might as well show you guys this. A couple tutorials ago where I talked to you guys about border, and it was like border width and border style and border color, and it was 3 lines all for the border, and it kind of, that's way too many lines just for one property. So if you want a consistent border across the entire thing, here's a nice little shorthand that you can do. If you just go ahead and type border and not width or not style or not color or anything like that, just border, you can go ahead and type all the values on one line, and CSS in your browser are smart enough to recognize it. So border, let's go ahead and set the 3 pixels, solid for the style, and black. So this will save you a little extra time when coding. You don't have to span this across 3 lines. If you just go ahead and save this and refresh, your border is going to know, or excuse me, your browser is going to know that that is what you want for a border. And actually, this is whenever you have something like top, left, right, and bottom, there is probably a shorthand technique that you can use for that. Or when you have like border style, border color, or different properties for the same element, there's usually a shorthand where you can skip a step or a shortcut with that as well. So even though I'm not going to teach you all the little shortcuts, whenever you think, there's probably a shortcut for this, well, there probably is. So if you want to look them up, it might save you some time. But anyways, I just want to throw that out there, let you guys know that there are shortcuts out there for doing things. I just don't have time in my tutorials to walk you through every one, or I'll be here for like the next 80 years teaching you guys all the little shortcuts. So anyways, thank you guys for watching this tutorial. I don't even know what I'm going to be talking about in the next tutorial, but I guarantee it'll be amazing. So how can you not watch the next video with that guarantee? So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll smell you guys later. What is going on, guys? It is Bucky, and welcome to your 25th XHTML and CSS tutorial. And in this tutorial, we're going to be going over how to style links. And if you guys are like, alright, I know that a link is A, so if I just go ahead and type A and write how I want the link to appear, it's good. No need to watch this tutorial. Well, not so fast, because a link is actually a lot more complicated than you might think. A link is actually composed of something called states, and a state is basically when and how you press the link. So I'm just going to go through the different states, and then you guys are going to understand what I'm talking about. There's one link for when the page is first visited. There's another state for when the link has been clicked. There's another state for as you're mousing over the link, and there's the last state is as your mouse button is down and as you are clicking the link. So one link can have 4 different styles, and they typically do have 4 different styles, believe it or not. So let's go ahead and let me show you how to not only change the styling on a link, but change the styling on each different state. So let's go ahead and just add well, first of all, we know that the element for link is A, so let's go ahead and add a link on our screen. So a href, whoa, hello, a href equals, of course, is going to go to thenewboston.com, and just type the new Boston and check it out. And we'll just actually add some. This is just normal text. So now we have a link, and when we refresh it, we have a link and some normal text. But as you can see, whenever we are hovering over it, or whenever we are clicking it, it changes to red. So we can begin to see the different kind of states right now, but maybe we don't want it to be, you know, purple by default, or when we click it to turn red. Those are the things where you're going to adjust. So by default, before you even click a link, it's going to be at its default state, and that is a semicolon link. The A stands for the anchor, of course, which is the element, and the semicolon and the name after it, this is the state. So now this is basically the default link. Now we can style it what it is by default. And let's just go ahead and add color red and text decoration. We'll just set this to none. Now the text decoration, you can either have this like underline, or I think there's something called like strike through or line through or something. No one ever uses it. It's basically underline or none. So first, let me point this out before I confuse you guys. When I refresh this, you says by default it doesn't turn red. That's because I already went to this site before plenty of times, thenewboston.com. So actually, what state we're looking at right now is visited. So let's go ahead and edit that right now. A visited is when you already clicked a link, and you know, it's like links visited. You know what it means. Why am I even explaining this to you? So we want the links that we already visited. Let's go ahead and just turn them green. Something real simple. So now when we go ahead and save and refresh this, since this link has already been visited, that's why it's going to appear green, just like that. So now we know how to adjust the style for default links that we haven't been to and links that we have been to. Now I told you guys that there are other states other than this, and that is one, their state is when you are hovering over the link. Now this doesn't matter if you already been to it or you have not been to it. When you're hovering over it, you're hovering over it. So let's go ahead and make this one a lot different. So background color, let's just change this to blue. Change the background to blue. And what else can we do? Change the color of the text to white. That might make it a little easier to read. Put text decoration underline. I always like hovering over to be underlined, so in order to do that, you need to change a property called text decoration. And let's just go ahead, font weight bold. Make sure I spelled that right. Good enough. So now whenever you hover over it, let me just go ahead and do this. Whenever you hover over it, you get a blue background. You can see the text changes from green to white. You get an underline, and your font turns from regular to bold. Pretty cool, huh? So that's like how to make your website kind of dynamic and changing using just basic CSS. So, just thought I'd throw that out there. So now the one last state I want to cover is called the active state. Now the active state is as you are pressing down and your finger is holding down that button, this is the active state. So active, what do we want to do when our mouse button is active? Let's just go ahead and do something simple. Change the background color to orange. Simple enough. So let's go ahead and save this and let me explain to you guys what my finger is doing. Alright, right now I'm just moving my mouse. Now I'm hovering over it, so that's where the A hover comes into play. And now I'm clicking down. Maybe you can hear me. Here, maybe you can hear my mouse. See, now I'm holding it down. Now it's active. And of course, if I let go, it's going to go ahead and take me to the greatest website ever, thenewboston.com. There we go. Welcome to the New Boston. Have to check this out later. But anyways, that is the basics